Viewer discretion is advised. The following story is based on actual events, witness testimony, personal experiences, and investigative research when available. To protect the privacy of those involved, some names, locations, timelines, and identifying details have been changed. The events are presented as they were reported by the individuals who experienced them. Their inclusion does not constitute independent verification of paranormal claims. Some cases find answers. Others leave only questions. This case remains open. The search continues. This is Unresolved Truths.
She holds the egg over the glass, and she doesn't look at me. She looks at my son. He's 3. He's been in a fever 3 days. He hasn't eaten, hasn't stood up, hasn't asked for anything, and he has never in his life gone that long without asking for something. Yesterday, a hospital full of people told me they didn't know what was wrong with him. Now, a woman I can barely speak to is telling me that if the water boils, we've found the fever. And if it turns black, we have a different problem. I'm 20 years old. I am praying for a glass of water to boil.
This account was submitted by a woman who was 20 at the time. She was working part-time and taking classes toward a certificate in medical billing. Her son was 3 years old. The events took place over 4 days in her mother's house, a single-family home with a converted in-law unit at the back. 2 things we were able to confirm independently. The clinical picture she describes is real and documented, and the ritual performed in that back bedroom is not folklore we had to go looking for. It is a named, studied, still practiced healing tradition with a written record going back 5 centuries. What we could not confirm is what happened at the end of it.
He's warm when I pick him up. Not alarming, warm. He felt like a loaf of bread that had been sitting near a window. The thermometer says 100.4. He's 3. 3-year-olds run 100.4 the way the rest of us clear our throats. I put him on the couch with the blanket he won't sleep without. The one with the blue trucks? Worn through at one corner because he holds that corner when he's tired. I tell my mother he's got a fever. She says she'll keep an eye on him. I have class at 8 and a shift at 2. And I am 20 years old and counting hours the way you count money when you don't have any. I want to be honest about the fact that I left. The second morning, he's still warm. 100.2. Lower, technically, and I hold on to that number all day like it means something. I decided to skip work and stopped at the pharmacy. I bought Pedialyte and sit on the edge of the couch and try to get him to drink it. He won't. He doesn't refuse it. That's the part I keep coming back to. He doesn't turn his head, doesn't push my hand away, doesn't say no. The straw touches his lip and nothing happens. My son is a loud child. He narrates. The dog outside, the sound the refrigerator makes. What he thinks the mailman's name is? That day he says 4 words to me. Mama, I'm tired. Then he sleeps. And every time I check on him, he is in the exact position I left him in. Not close to it. Exactly it. Same arm, same hand, same corner of the blanket. On the 3rd morning, I call work and say I'm sick. It is the first lie I tell that week, and it will not be the last. I just couldn't take it anymore, seeing my son so ill. I get him dressed and head straight to the emergency room. The fever still hasn't broken 101, not once in 3 days. And I need you to understand that this made it worse, not better. 104 is a crisis. 101 is a question. They take him back. A resident, an intern, and a nurse who was kind to me in a way I didn't deserve. I was rude to her within 10 minutes, but she never once let me see that it landed. Chest X-ray, blood draw, urine sample. Then a second blood draw. because someone wanted to run something again. 3 days without food, and every number comes back. I remember the resident's exact word, unremarkable. Then they call in a specialist. That's when I stopped being able to sit still. My brother had driven us to the hospital, but I hadn't seen him since we arrived. Truthfully, I had forgotten about him entirely. A nurse went out to the waiting room and brought him back. A gesture I only later realized was deliberate. They put us in a small room. Not an exam room. Soft chairs, a box of tissues on the table. If you've ever been in an American hospital, you know what that room is for. 5 of them walked in. The resident, the intern, 2 nurses, and the specialist. 5 people do not come in to tell you your son has an ear infection. I pulled my son closer into my lap as the specialist sat down across from us. He was holding my son's chart, but he never opened it. He already knew what was inside, and there was nothing in it worth reading out loud. He said, "We don't know what's wrong with your son." And then he said the phrase I've never been able to put down. This has never happened before. My brother stood up before the man finished speaking. He came around, reached out his arms to take my son from me, and said, "Give him to me. I'm going to take him to the car." He knew I was about to fall apart. He knew what was coming because he'd known me his whole life. I am not going to repeat what I said to those people. It went on for minutes. I said things that were cruel, things that were not fair, things that were never theirs to carry. I poured it all over them. And they just sat there. All of them. Nobody moved. Nobody called security. Nobody had the audacity to tell me to calm down. The nurse, the very one I had been rude to within 10 minutes of walking through the doors, wept, not loudly. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and let her face do whatever it needed to do. I have wanted to find that woman for years, just to hold her hands and say, "I'm sorry." When I walked out, I had to pass straight through the waiting room, right past a room full of strangers who had heard every single word. My son was already asleep in the back of my brother's car. My brother turned and looked at me. Neither of us said a word, and then both of us completely broke. High up on the 4th level of a cold parking garage, we shattered, and my son slept right through it. Because by then, my son slept through everything. The next morning, I called the community college, registrar, and my supervisor at the restaurant to tell them I was sick. Then I sat on the edge of my mattress, 20 years old, staring at the plastic receiver sitting in its cradle on the nightstand. His father needed to know. We weren't together anymore. We were just 2 scared kids who had a baby before either of us knew how to be adults. He was barely 22, working whenever he could, trying to figure out his own life. I was juggling classes, shifts at the restaurant, and motherhood. We loved our son. We just didn't know how to love each other. By then, most of our conversations ended the same way. One of us would get frustrated. Voices would rise. Someone would slam the receiver down. Then we'd cool off, call back a day or 2 later, and pretend none of it had happened. We were trying to co-parent through pride, exhaustion, and resentment, and we weren't very good at it. But none of that mattered anymore. There was no version of this story where his father didn't get told. I couldn't pick up the phone. To call him, I would have to say the words out loud. I would have to dial his number and put "my son" and the word "dying" into the very same sentence. Somewhere deep inside my mind, I had convinced myself that speaking those words would make them real. As long as they stayed trapped inside my own head, maybe there was still time for someone to tell me the doctors were wrong. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake. If I gave those words to him through that wire, they would exist out in the world. They would become permanent. And I knew I could never take them back. So I left the phone where it was. I climbed back into bed beside my little boy, lying on top of the blankets, and rested my hand flat against his back just to feel the faint rise and fall of his tiny chest. I wept without making a single sound, swallowing every sob so I wouldn't wake him. I don't know why I thought that mattered. Considering he hadn't opened his eyes in a day and a half, I wasn't worried anymore. I wasn't frightened of his father, or the fight that might come, or even the truth itself. I was just waiting. My door came open without a knock. My mother stood in the doorway, looked at the two of us on that bed, and said 7 words. "Wrap him up and bring him downstairs." Then she was gone. She didn't wait for an answer. I could already hear her on the stairs. It was that somebody had given me an instruction. For 4 days, every decision had been mine. And every one of them had been wrong. And here was a sentence with a verb in it that I could just do. So I did it. I wrapped him in the blanket with the blue trucks. He was so light. He had been a weight before. You know how a sleeping child gets heavier? And he wasn't that anymore. He was warm-clothed in my arms. I carried him down. I counted the stairs. I don't know why I remember counting the stairs. My cousin and his wife lived in the in-law unit at the back of the house. She had come up from a rancho outside Nacaslan in Zacatecas. She and I had never had a conversation. Not one. She spoke no English, and my Spanish was 2 years of high school and a lot of confidence. I had said good morning to that woman maybe 200 times. That was the entire relationship. My mother met me at the door, and before she let me in, she asked me something I have never gotten out of my head. She said, "Do you think you could believe what's about to happen?" She shrugged, and she walked away. I've decided since that the shrug was the answer. It didn't matter what I believed. It wasn't for me. She came into the kitchen with her hair tied back. She had changed her clothes. She held up a cup and said, in slow Spanish, "The way you talk to a child, I'm going to fill this cup with water." And she filled it at the tap. Then she took an egg out of the carton. And this is a regular egg. She wasn't performing. She was doing the opposite of performing. She was showing me there was no trick. The way you show somebody a card before you deal it. She led me into the bedroom and told me to lay him down. Then she started to pray. It was mostly Spanish, but it had a rhythm that wasn't conversation and wasn't churchy there. And there were words in it I didn't catch. I understand now, I probably wouldn't have caught them even if my Spanish had been perfect. She crossed herself. She made the sign of the cross over him. And she began. She started at the crown of his head and moved the egg down over him. Not fast, not dramatic. The most ordinary set of movements you can imagine. The way you would smooth a sheet. Forehead, throat, chest, down each arm. And she opened each of his hands and passed it over the palm. Stomach, both legs, the soles of both feet. She said, "Turn him." I turned him over, and she did the whole thing again down his back. She did it 3 times. I counted, because counting was the only thing I had to do. And I remember thinking, in the middle of it, there is a specialist. 40 minutes from here, who told me? This has never happened before. and I am standing in a bedroom watching a woman rub an egg on my child. And I do not have a better idea. When she finished, she looked at me for the first time since we had come into the room. Egg in one hand, cup in the other. And she told me, my mother filling in the parts. I lost exactly what was about to happen. Before it happened, she said, I'm going to crack this egg into this water. If it boils, we have the fever. If it does nothing, we have to do something else. But if it turns black, we have a problem. I have thought about the structure of that sentence for years. 3 outcomes, named in advance. In front of a witness who wanted nothing in the world but one of them, she cracked it on the rim. I watched the white go into the water, and I watched it turn. Cloudy first, then white, solid white, coming up off the yolk in columns, the way it does in a pot on a stove. Threads of it standing straight up in the glass. The yolk stayed whole and settled at the bottom. The egg cooked in tap water from a faucet I have drunk out of 1,000 times. She looked at that cup and she looked satisfied. Not surprised, satisfied. Like a mechanic who has found the noise. I went for my son. She put her hand up. My mother said it for her. Let him come to you. And my son sat up. Not slowly. He came up off that mattress the way children do. All at once, in one motion, like the last 4 days had been a nap. I don't remember making a sound. My hand went to my mouth. I stepped back. My legs hit a chair, and I sat down in it hard without meaning to. He got off the bed. He walked across the room. He climbed up me, foot on the chair, hand on my shoulder. The way he always did, and put his arms around my neck. Then he leaned back and looked at my face. And whatever was on it, he read it. He said, "I fine." He hugged me again. Then he said, "I hungry?" My mother laughed. That cackle of hers. It snapped me out of wherever I had gone. She said, "Go get him something to eat." And then, walking out of the room, she said the last thing anybody said about it that day. She said, "Just don't give him any eggs." And she cackled all the way down the hall.
After we published this account, we did what we always do. We went looking for the seams. What we found instead was a 500-year paper trail. The woman in that back bedroom was not improvising. Every movement she made that afternoon is documented, in order, in the anthropological literature. So we went and learned the practice properly, and then we came back to the story. The system is called Curanderismo, from cura to heal. It is not one thing. It is a fusion, and the seams are still visible in it. The indigenous layer comes from Mesoamerica, Mexica, and Maya medicine, in which illness is an imbalance between a person and the world around them, and cleansing is the correction. The Spanish layer arrived in the 16th century, carrying humoral theory inherited from ancient Greece, the idea that health is a balance of hot and cold, wet and dry. And the Catholic layer arrived with it, the sign of the cross, the Lord's Prayer, the invocation of San Miguel Arcangel for protection in the middle of the cleansing. 3 medical systems laid on top of each other and still running. The practitioner is a curandera, almost always a woman, almost never formally trained. The knowledge moves from grandmother to mother to daughter by watching in a kitchen. The specific procedure she performed is called a barrida, a sweeping. The egg is chosen because in this tradition, it is understood as a sponge for what does not belong. It has to be raw, it has to be whole, and afterward it has to be discarded, never eaten, which is exactly what the witness's mother said on her way. Out of that room, the sweeping runs head to foot. The crown, the forehead, the throat, the chest, the palms, the stomach, the legs, the soles. Then the same again down the back. 3 passes is the standard count. The published field descriptions and the witnesses' account match. on every one of those points, and she had no reason to know any of them at 20 years old. Then comes the part that made this account worth investigating. The egg is cracked into a glass of water and read. This is a diagnostic step, and the vocabulary for it is consistent across regions. Clear water with an intact yolk means nothing was carried. Cloudy or spiked white means accumulated negativity. Threads and webs mean interference from another person. Dark or blackened. Material is the serious reading. That is the one every practitioner will tell you they hope not to see. And the white that turns opaque and stands up in columns, as though it had been dropped in a boiling pot, is read as heat, fever, illness pulled out of the body and made visible in the glass. She named all three of the readings she considered possible, out loud before she cracked the shell. The condition being treated in a small child is mal de ojo, the evil eye, and it is not what most people assume. It is not a curse. In the documented tradition, it is caused by admiration held too long by an adult who does not touch the child. Touch discharges it. The gaze alone leaves it behind. This is the reason grandmothers across Latin America insist that you touch the baby you just complimented. The recorded pediatric symptom set is fever, listlessness, refusal to eat, disordered sleep, and crying that cannot be settled. This is not fringe material inside American medicine either. Mal de ojo appeared in the American Psychiatric Association's glossary of culture-bound syndromes in the DSM-4-TR. It is taught in cultural competency, training to pediatric residents in the United States today, and the American Medical Association's own Journal of Ethics has published guidance on how clinicians should handle a family who brings one of these presentations into an exam room. A hospital told this mother that what her son had, they had never seen before. 400 miles of published literature says her cousin's wife had a name for it before she walked into the room. We want to be careful here, because this is where most channels stop being honest. Curanderismo does not claim to be a replacement for medicine, and the practitioners we read do not claim it either. A 4-day febrile illness in a 3-year-old resolves on its own most of the time. Dehydrated, exhausted children recover suddenly and dramatically. Egg white can be made to denature outside a pan. None of that is what we can't account for. What we can't account for is the sequencing. A woman with no English, no clinical training, and no prior conversation with this family's medical situation stated 3 specific possible outcomes in advance, in front of a witness, and then produced the one she had assigned to fever, in a room where the child had been non-responsive for 4 days, and from which he walked out under his own power 10 minutes later. We have found no account of anyone in that house asking her to explain it afterward. Real accounts, no conclusions.